This week on Sci-Fi Buzz, two Star Trek insiders dish some dirt on the original series. Harlan Ellison prods us to preserve the past.
You could hit this car with 200 small Japanese cars and they would be demolished into ashes.
Science fiction gives way to fact as NASA prepares to explore Mars. And the Escape from New York team of John Carpenter and Kurt Russell reunites to escape from L.A.
The winds are blowing, let's go!
Prepare. Stand by. The buzz.
Sci-Fi.
Get ready.
Sci-Fi. Sci-Fi Buzz.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special edition of Sci-Fi Buzz. I'm your host, Mike Jarek. At least I think it's special, but look at the staff here. They're still in their summer shorts. Well, sure, it's hot. I don't think they understand the significance of the fashion show you're about to see. Yes, the national debut isn't until late August, but here on the Buzz, we're going to be a special preview. Yeah, sneak peek at Star Trek Barbie and her intergalactic sidekick, Ken. Okay, let's describe the outfits. Federation uniforms, of course, along with phasers, communicators. Oh, and look at those tricorders. $80 for the set. And that is tonight's Toy Report. Now for some Buzz news.
Kick the tires and light the fires, Big Daddy.
It seems there's no stopping those Independence Day aliens. Their spaceships have been spotted everywhere, from popular themed restaurants to the covers of the world's most prestigious news magazines. So it's not surprising the picture made $100 million at the box office, faster than any other film ever. And though people lined up across the country to see the blockbuster, at least one famous movie buff was lucky enough to have a private screening at his own house.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
That's right, Buzzers. It turns out the first guy himself is a big genre fan. And ID4 isn't the only sci-fi the Clintons are watching at home these days. The First family has just had the Sci-Fi channel installed at the White House. They've also had their Camp David retreat hooked up to the channel, allowing them to watch fabulous shows like this one. So now that the White House is wired for Sci-Fi, we hope the Clintons won't miss a single episode of The Buzz. And we promise to keep them up to date on the whereabouts of those pesky aliens. And that's the latest Buzz.
Sci-Fi Buzz.
For years, the planet Mars has been a popular setting for science fiction stories. But if NASA has its way, the red planet may soon lose the mystique that has made it a desirable literary locale. Scheduled to blast off at the end of the year, Mars Pathfinder will be the first mission to Mars since Viking 1 and 2 were launched in the mid-70s. Managed by the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL, the $270 million project is an experiment in low-cost space missions.
When we get to Mars, what we're going to be doing is demonstrating that we can actually go to Mars and land on Mars for a small fraction of what it cost us to do it the last time.
Indeed, the Viking missions rang up a staggering tab of $3.6 billion. So NASA and JPL are out to prove that valuable information can be gathered from our planetary neighbor at a reasonable price.
The Pathfinder mission is actually essentially an engineering mission, showing that for fixed amount of money that are relatively small in a scale of planetary mission costs, that we can land a payload on Mars. And then while we are there, we are going to take advantage of the fact that we are there to do a lot of scientific experiments.
That includes setting up a weather station to gather information about wind velocity, temperatures, and other meteorological data. But the heart of the project revolves around a 25-pound, six-wheel vehicle called the Mars Rover, or Sojourner. With the ability to climb over rocks almost as tall as it is, the rover will venture off the spacecraft to explore the surface of the planet.
It will be equipped with things such as the instrument we call the alpha proton X-ray spectrometer that once you put it against a rock or a soil can give you the elemental composition of the rock of the soil. And of course it would be nice if we come across one rock that shows a heavy density of carbon, indicating that maybe there might be some fossils of past life on Mars, something like this.
The rover will be pre-programmed not to flip on its back. But beyond that, it's blessed with the intelligence of a bug. So a human operator on Earth designates each day's goals. Then the solar-operated Sojourner obeys those orders to the best of its abilities.
And what's happening is that it takes about 10 hours being at that rock to get all the information that we need from a single rock. And then when the sun goes down, of course, the rover will just go to sleep, awaiting the sun for another day of exploration.
During the crucial planning stages, scientists at JPL have been testing the mobility of the rover on a makeshift Martian landscape at their headquarters in Pasadena, California. Once the spacecraft carrying the rover is launched, it will travel more than 300 million miles for 7 months. Then after landing on Mars in July of 1997, the real journey begins. Next, Star Trek Scuttlebutt from two veterans of the 1960s series. And Harlan Ellison's commentary. Do not terminate this transmission. Well, our crack staff has done it again. They've put together some sources that the X-Files writers actually used for inspiration. Strange stuff here. There are two publishing houses in this country that specialize in kind of following the activities of shadowy groups, cultists, out-and-out freaks. One of them's called Feral House, and they have published, well, this is their latest, called Cult Rapture. Inside, they tell the story of this strange San Diego UFO cult called the Unarians. Weirdos. Also, here's a whole catalog. This is put out by Loom Panics Unlimited, a catalog of the strange. Now, supposedly true stuff, an extraordinary reading. Hey, let's check our own buzzboard now.
This is Michael Murphy from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'd like to tell all the sci-fi buzzers about Twister with Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt. It's fantastic. It's filled with heart-stopping action scenes and special effects that will literally blow you away. The movie's about a group of people called storm chasers. They chase tornadoes and try to figure out how they work. The visual effects of the tornadoes are great. You see cows, trucks, and tractors flying all around in circles, and you feel like the tornado is right there in front of you. By the end of the movie, you feel like you've actually chased a tornado and lived through it.
Emergency stations. All decks on fire alert.
About 3 years ago, I suddenly got lots of calls from journalists, writers saying, listen, we want to write a book on Star Trek. We don't know anything about it. Would you tell us? And I said, that's ridiculous. No, I'm not going to tell you, and I'm going to write a book myself.
No living beings have the inside scoop on the original Star Trek series like Herb Solow and Bob Justman. Many books have been written about the classic science fiction show since it premiered 30 years ago. But now Solow and Justman have collaborated on their own tome, Inside Star Trek. And they insist they boldly go where no writer has gone before.
What's going to stand out is the fact that people who read the book will discover that for the first time they're reading the truth about what happened.
In the spring of 1964, Herb Solow was the vice president of Desilu Studios. He was pitched an idea by Gene Roddenberry for a series described as Wagon Train to the Stars. Solow saw potential and set out to convince studio owner Lucille Ball that Star Trek was worth a shot. But selling the commanding comedian on the show took more effort than Solow had bargained for.
I used to go to the board meetings and explain to Lucy what we're doing, what we're not doing, how it's going, what it's going to cost. Lucy suddenly pipes up and says, Herb, tell us about that South Sea series you're doing. I said, the what? You know, Herb, the South Sea series. Now, Lucy's attorney and other members of the board are looking at me going, would you tell her about the South Sea series? And I'm going, I don't know about the South Sea series. Finally, Lucy says, I remember, I know what it was. It's called Star Trek. And I said, what? She says, you know, the USO members, the actors going to visit the troops during the war, Star Trek. And I said, Lucy, can I see you outside for a moment?
Bob Justman was hired as associate producer on Star Trek's rejected first pilot, The Cage. After the success of a second pilot, he went on to become co-producer of the series. Over the years, Justman brought in several respected science fiction writers to work on the show.
What are you? I am the guardian of forever.
An entire chapter of Inside Star Trek is devoted to Harlan Ellison. It seems Ellison took an unusually long time writing City on the Edge of Forever.
We finally reached the point quite a few months afterwards, maybe 6 or 7 months afterward, when in order to get the first draft teleplay out of Harlan, I locked him in my office overnight. And he finally finished that teleplay one night, but to get even with me, he went into my secretary's office and he ate the plant on her desk.
Unlike most books written about the show, Inside Star Trek offers a realistic, sometimes critical portrayal of Gene Roddenberry.
It wasn't until we were on the air about a year that Gene became a little difficult when it came to whose ideas were who did this, who did what, and Gene became very possessive. I think he tended to promote himself a great deal rather than promoting Star Trek. But if he did not self-promote, Star Trek would have died.
After Star Trek ceased production in the late 60s, Solo went on to head production at MGM Studios. Justman eventually produced the first season of Star Trek: The Next Generation, but both look back fondly on those early days.
We shared many dangers together. We shared the effort of trying to do something that was well nigh impossible. That's why it made it such an important time in our lives.
I'm sitting in my car. My car is a 1947 Packard. I got a current car. I drive that one, but I love the Packard. I love the Packard because it was built to run, built to last. You could hit this car with 200 small Japanese cars and they would be demolished into ashes. When I go past a grade school, little kids have no idea what this car is. They have no idea it was made in 1947. They don't even know there was a year called 1947. But they see this car go by and they give me that. And that means they recognize something that is forever, like the pyramids. Now, I want to talk to you about a couple of things that I think are important for you to try and remember, things that you can help preserve the past with. And I do this so that you will not be ignorant, and you will not be stupid, and you will not be uneducated. Now, the first is the idea of the great bookstores. Almost all the independent bookstores are being driven out of business by these huge megalithic bookstores, the Borders and the Walden Books and the Barnes & Nobles, 565 million square feet, push out the mom and pop stores. When they do that, it means that they cut out all of the potential for finding books that you can't get at those big bookstores. Yeah, you can find Danielle Steele, you can find Stephen King, you can find Tom Clancy, but you're not going to be able to find Gerald Kirsch. You're not going to be able to find Zoe Oldenburg. You're not going to be able to find Cecilia Holland. What you got to do is remember that, yeah, you're going to be able to save a few bucks if you go to one of the big bookstores, but you're driving the mom and pop stores out of business. The same for Blockbuster. Those hideous blue and yellow, what are they, blue and yellow stores that crop up like a giant pimple on the landscape. When they drive the little neighborhood video stores out of business, it means you're not going to be able to get all the underground films that you should be seeing, all of the small films. Hell, they don't even carry NC-17 films. So I'm talking to you about not necessarily patronizing the big stores. Now, if you recall, a couple of commentaries ago, I talked to you about the golden age of comics. This is a set of cards that Comic Images was going to be bringing out. Well, they brought them out. This is just a little sample of them. And each one of them is a cover of an old comic book with wonderful commentary on the back by Ron Goulart, the great historian of comic books. And this is a way to preserve the past. This is a way, in modern terms, to save that which is good from before. Now, I was talking to you about bookstores. Here's a book that will never be sold in a Barnes & Noble. This is one of the Charnel House books. You see this? This is denim. He did the books in denim. And who is he? He is Joe Stefko. Joe Stefko is, even to this day, the drummer for the Turtles, the rock group the Turtles. But Joe, in his spare time, He's a publisher. He does Charnel House Books. He only does maybe one book a year, but he produces them with such incredible loving care. And these are wonderful, beautiful books that are built to last, just like this car. Joe has got 2 books left that you really ought to get. One of them is a Dean Koontz book called Beast Child. And Beast Child sells for $150. There's only 750 copies of them. There's only a few left. And it's got an introduction by Dean, and it's exquisitely printed on Mohawk vellum, end sheets of Fabriano Ingres, slip-cased in iris cloth. It's $150. Now, not all of you can afford it. He brought it out in 1992. There's a few left. And the other one is the new Tim Powers book, Where They Are Hid, which is a wonderful little original, never-before printed story by Tim Powers. For the most part, you got to know that these things existed. You got to know that they happened. Because if you think the world is nothing but fast food and the kind of stuff that you see on the newsstands now, you should be told that there was a lot that went before. And as Santana said, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it.
Sci-Fi Buzz.
Coming up, the long-awaited sequel to Escape from New York. This time with 1990s special effects. Stand by.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
You really look handsome today.
Thank you. You see, I wore a suit, so they're giving me trouble. They're dressed inappropriately. I mean, check out these shoes. What is that? Who likes these? Oh, well, you would.
John Lockway calling from Arizona. Retro life forms will relish Outre, Film Facts Magazine's younger sibling. Trey Cool, Outre boasts insightful commentary and sumptuous graphics. It's total immersion in monochrome space-age zeitgeist. Bradbury, Serling, Beaumont, Outer Limits, not to mention Theremans and Harlan Ellison's toward the pause button should check their pulse.
I give you the death of Snake Plissken!
For those of you who thought ultimate anti-hero Snake Plissken was already dead, I've got news for you. He's alive and kicking and punching and shooting his way into theaters one more time, all the while trying desperately to escape from L.A. Star Kurt Russell, director John Carpenter, and producer Deborah Hill have reunited 16 years after Escape from New York. This time, it's the year 2013, and Los Angeles is an island prison for all those deemed morally corrupt.
Action!
This character, I mean, it's one that's been a favorite of both mine and Kurt, and we've always wanted to do a sequel because he's such a cool guy.
You got a problem with that?
Not only does Russell look almost exactly as he did back in the 1980 original, he even managed to squeeze into his old costume.
And it fit okay. I needed to do a little more working out to get it to fit right, you know.
And though Snake sports a new high-tech stealth suit through most of the film and battles a whole new slew of villains, Carpenter assures us that this picture remains true to its predecessor.
Most of the audience has not seen the original film. They don't know who Snake is, so we have to reintroduce him to the world and say, here he is, as if the other one wasn't made. But at the same time, try to make it so that the fans of the first one will enjoy themselves.
Though Russell's $10 million salary was more than the entire budget of the first film, he claims it was really his love of the character that brought him back to the role.
It's almost like Snake was trained in everything there was. At some point you'll have to hang glide, at some point you have to surf. So today, boys, we're grab your boards, we're gonna learn to surf a tsunami.
Let the front edge pick you up. Don't get on your board to go right to the top. Don't blow it. If you fall off the board, it's the big one now.
With the stunning Wilshire Boulevard tsunami sequence, compliments of Buena Vista Visual Effects, the filmmakers have redefined the term Surf City.
We found this sort of machine in Texas called the Wave Lock, and we were able to shoot that and do green screen, and it all kind of came together, all the water elements and everything. And I just think it's a really cool thing for this character to do, you know. He's trapped, you know, during an earthquake, you know, on Wilshire Corridor, and the fastest way out is on a wave. That's only logical.
And though Snake manages to make his escapes look relatively effortless, working amid big special effects is not always fun and games.
I fly, so hang gliding was a lot of fun, difficult sequences to do because they're technically involved. You've shot some of it, you've got some of it yet to shoot. Those are long processes.
Who are you? I'm your president. Understand you got some domestic problems.
In the film, the United States is ruled by a morally superior, evil president. Is there perhaps a message Carpenter hopes the audience will take home with them during this election year?
Oh, it's a good time. I mean, I want them to have a good time in this. It's a ride, and I want them to think that what Snake does in the end, given his circumstances, is a fairly cool thing to do. It's pretty dark, but it's pretty cool.
There's no questioning Snake's coolness. Now the filmmakers hope Escape from L.A. is also cool enough to heat up the late summer box office. Hey, this just in. Did you hear this? MST 3K is coming to the Sci-Fi channel. Oh, yes, and they're brand new episodes, not reruns. It's going to happen 3 times per week. MST 3K, found a home right here on the Sci-Fi channel. Yay! And it starts in February. And we'll be back here next week for Sci-Fi Buzz. See you then, everybody.
NASA says there was once life on Mars. What do you think? Join the Sci-Fi Channel live online at sci-fi.com, Monday night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, following the premiere of the V Saga.
Now stay tuned for Inside Space next on the Sci-Fi Channel.